Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Club of Florence Chronicles from COP27. I have the pleasure today to be here with Juan Chang. Hello, Juan. Good afternoon. Juan is connected from Sharm el-Sheikh COP27. Juan Chang is currently the head of technical operation at Permian Global. Permian Global is a private sector company dedicated to investing in tropical forest conservation globally. Previously, Juan led the forest and land use sector at the Green Climate Fund, also served as senior forest and land use specialist at Inter-American Development Bank, auditor of forest carbon project, and several years of experience in the Peruvian Amazon, with more than 20 years of experience. Juan, again, thank you very much for being here today. And we are keen to hear from an expert like yourself in carbon market. Would you be so kind to tell us in a very simple word how does the mechanics of carbon market works, how carbon credits are generated, and how those translate into something useful and actually positive tool for climate action?
Excellent. Thank you very much, Claudio, for inviting me to participate in this discussion, and thank you very much for the question. Well, basically, carbon finance is been around for almost 20 years. Back in the days of the Kyoto Protocol, when as a part of the implementation, the countries agreed on the clean development mechanism, under which there was a possibility for countries compensating emissions from the purchase of actions that are reducing emissions somewhere else. So basically how it works is that, going back to the very basic principles. So we have globally emissions that cannot be reduced immediately. So there is a process in which industries, different sectors will need to reduce their emissions towards meeting our climate goals. However, there are emissions that cannot be mitigated immediately. Like, for instance, we depend very much on fossil fuels today. We take airplanes, we fly all over, and there's no other alternative than just using fossil fuels to fly those planes. Technology should develop in a way that these emissions, maybe different types of fuels or other technology available, would allow us to generate less emissions. But until that happens, these industries need to compensate those emissions by either investing or buying carbon offsets. Now, a carbon offset is basically a unit that is equivalent. If you emit 1 ton of CO2 from your industry, you need to compensate that ton of CO2 with an action that reduced that ton from the atmosphere. So the balance is neutralized, let's say. And how do we create these offsets? In the case of our company, we work on tropical forests. And what is happening in the tropical forests is that they are being destroyed by many different reasons in different parts of the world. And that destruction generates emissions coming from the forest as a result of the destruction. The emissions come from the trees that are being cut down and burned. And that burning of these trees releases the carbon that was stored on those trees when they were growing up as part of the photosynthesis. Now, when we invest in protecting this forest, those emissions are avoided. That's why it's called avoided emissions. And that avoidance of emissions generates the carbon that can be used as an offset that compensates the emission that is being generated by someone else. And that trade is what is called the carbon market. Was it clear enough?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. And would you perhaps give us an example of a project that you are undertaking with Permian Global, and perhaps also give us an idea on what are the volume of business and also hectares of forest that Permian is working on and where globally?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Claudio. In total, at the moment, we have 3 existing projects already generating units that have a coverage of almost 500,000 hectares in total. One project is in Brazil, one is in Indonesia, and another is in Malaysia. So these are active projects, but we have we're working on an ongoing pipeline of more than 20 projects that should come up also in the near future. Now, the volume of carbon offsets that is generated depends on many circumstances, like for instance the type of ecosystems where these projects are. For example, we have one project in Indonesia that generates 7 million tons of offsets per year, and we have a project in Brazil around the same similar extension of land, 150, almost 150,000 hectares each one. But the project in Brazil generates around 500,000 tons of offsets per year. And this difference is because the Indonesia project is protecting very carbon-rich peatlands. Peatlands are a type of vegetation that is flooded with water, and there are trees on top, so it's a peatland forest. But because of the conversion of these type of ecosystems to, for example, palm oil or plantation, what happens is that these pit areas are drained, so the water is extracted, and then everything is cut and burned, and that generates high volume of emissions. So the carbon that is stored in this pit vegetation is also released when this is drained and burned. And that generates a very high volume of carbon. But our project in Brazil generates only 500,000, but it's not small. But it's because of the type of forest that we have there. It doesn't have the same vegetation like in Indonesia.
Thank you, Juan, for your answer. And would you be so kind to tell us and explain us practically what happened in this portion of forest when this forest actually comes under the management of your company? What do you actually do? What changes also for the life of the people that are living there, the population?
Yeah. Nice question. So let's put it this way, if we wouldn't have invested in this project, the land would have been converted into a plantation of acacia or palm oil, and causing the destruction of the forest, loss of biodiversity, and eventually causing the loss of the ecosystem services that are beneficial for the communities living around, like access to clean water, access to plants and medicine that they rely on for their livelihoods, regulating the climate, and so on. So because of the project, what we do is we prevent the destruction of the forests, maintaining the ecosystem. But not only that, because of the sale of the carbon, what we do is that we provide alternative livelihoods to the communities living around these forest concessions. For instance, in Indonesia, we have investments in microcredit lines that is run entirely by women, and is managed by women, and is for women of the communities. We have investments in small transformation plants of producing products like pineapple chips that are packed and sold in the markets. We have invested in health centers.
I think we lost the connection for a while.
Can you hear me now? Can you repeat?
Yes.
Maybe I can. Yeah.
Yes, you can repeat. I think we arrived from managed by women's. If you can start back from there.
Okay, yeah. So what I was saying is the type of investment that we do that once we protect the forest, that is, we need to provide alternative economic opportunities for the communities who live around the area. So once we sell the carbon offsets and we generate revenues, a significant portion of those revenues are used to reinvest in socioeconomic development of the communities as a ways to provide them alternative livelihoods compared to working in an activity that can be destructive to the forest. I was explaining that we have invested in small producing plants for example, converting pineapple dry fruits like pineapple into chips and packed, so they are sold in the markets. Peanuts and other activities that do not cause forest degradation. And in addition to that, we also invested in a health center. We support the schools. There is a scholarship program that allows kids to go to high school, and on these other kinds of investments that are possible to do because of the finance that is coming from forest conservation, which didn't happen in the past. Actually, that's why we have deforestation globally. There hasn't been an economic incentive to protect forests. I said at the beginning that the carbon markets have been around for almost 20 years, but it is just in these recent years that the voluntary market has picked up, and many corporates are making commitments to reduce their emissions as a contribution to address climate change. So the demand for carbon offsets has increased, and therefore the price has increased.
Thank you so much, Juan. This is very clear. And so at this point, I would ask you if you can provide us with a view of what the trending of the market grow are, how it has been growing in the last year, and what do you expect the mark will grow in the coming year. And basically, if you are optimistic or not that we can finally move to a higher level of ambition, also in the regulation of the carbon markets. And on these regards, it would be great also if you give us an overview on how this market is currently regulated, and also the expected innovation on Article 6, what we are talking about, and what we expect that will happen at COP27.
Sorry, I was on mute. I was saying, yeah, these are quite a few questions, so I'll try to address them all.
Well, maybe Juan, maybe yes, you're right. Maybe I made too many questions altogether. It's better if I divide them. What do you think?
Yeah, let me start with the price of the carbon and the trends. So today, what is happening is that there is more demand than supply, and at least on our case, we've sold all our inventory, and we are getting ready for new batches for next year. What is happening in the market is that the voluntary market standards are, I think, because of the high demand for generating carbon offsets, they came into a position where they are a bit overwhelmed by the activity that is happening in the market. So there's a slow process in order to be able to deliver these carbon offsets because of the standards secretariats that are being overwhelmed with a lot of demand. Now, in terms of the price, the trend is that the price is going to increase. I remember when I started working on these carbon markets back in 2005-06, the prices started at $2, $1 per each ton of CO2, which is one carbon offset is equivalent to 1 ton of CO2. And then at some point the prices were 5, and then they dropped at 20 cents because there was no demand. Until the last 3 years, maybe, the price went up very quickly to to 10, everybody was happy. When it became 11, everybody was super happy. Last year, actually this year, the prices were 15, 17. So the market grew very fast, very quick, and that generated large volume of finance for actions that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And as I said before, it's never been a case where protecting a forest can be a profitable business and generate development for communities. The trend is that in the future there will be more demand in the coming years. There are very ambitious targets to comply to reduce the global emissions, and corporates are making these pledges that are, let's say, in principle, very ambitious. In principle, in practice, we will see what happens, because we've seen commitments in previous years. There has been already many attempts to stop deforestation and ambitious targets. There was one target I remember that had said that stop deforestation by 2020. We already have 2022, and we didn't do it at all. But let's say that yes, because of those commitments, there will be more demand, and the prices will increase in the coming years. Of course, the endless growth that doesn't exist. So there will be a point in which the market will regulate the price, and will probably stay in a steady state. But that future is yet to come. We need to implement now. We need action yesterday, and keep going. The current market is attractive enough to incentivize action on the ground. I think that was a long answer for one of the questions. I think a related question that you asked was about Article 6. Article
Yes.
6 Article 6 is one of the articles of the Paris Agreement, and the Article 6 is divided into two sub-articles. Article 6. Well, several actually sub-articles, but those that are related to carbon markets are mainly the Article 6.2 and 6.4. Article 6.2 will allow governments collaboration to transfer units where a country meets its nationally determined contribution, which is the target that a country sets as part of the Paris Agreement. And if that country, after having achieved those targets, and has an additional volume of emission reductions or sequestered carbon because of more conservation or more forest plantations, that country could transfer that volume to another country that probably is not able to fulfill its target, but it will use these units that are called ITMOs, internationally transferable mitigation outcomes, to this other country. That's Article 6.2. Article 6.4 is a mechanism that is very similar to the clean development mechanism so far, as I understand, that will allow projects transferring units to countries, similar to the CDM. That 6.4 article, as has been said in the corridors during the COP meetings, is likely to be postponed for next year, which is quite disappointing, because we need action right now, and not just to postpone decisions. There needs to be a way to incentivize pragmatic decision making and less bureaucracy, I would say.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you so much. So I hear this not a very good news, let's say, a little bit deluding on Article 6. But before you said that now, at least protecting a forest is a profitable business. So this is, we can say, it's something that is already placing us in a good direction if we want to see something positive. And this is a news from the last few years, right? It was not the case before, as you mentioned.
That's correct. That's correct. Well, another encouraging news, even though it is perhaps politically driven, but still it's good to have governments being part of this action. Of course, they should be the main actors, and what I've been describing so far is mostly from the private sector. But there was an announcement called the Forest and Climate Leaders Partnership, which is something new that has been launched here at COP, that includes, I think, around 25 countries, and there have been pledges of increasing volume of finance for forest conservation at the government level. And the pledge is to end deforestation by the end of 2030. And several billions of dollars have been financed or going to be deployed to do that. This is a follow-up from what the governments last year at the Glasgow in COP26. COP26, they made this commitment to do something about forests. So maybe that's still encouraging to see and hear, not to have this very high level political support, but what we need is action on the ground. How these pledges, commitments, big announcements become in real action and contribute to stop deforestation, benefit communities, and address climate change.
Thank you, Juan. And on the side of REDD+ finance, did you hear encouraging signals? And if you have to advise the entire negotiator of the COP, which actions they should agree to be serious about climate impactful investment in forestry and conservation, in your opinion, if you would advise them?
Yeah, well, discussions on REDD+ have not happened during this meeting. Actually, the negotiation on REDD+ ended up back in 2013 with the agreement of the Warsaw Framework for REDD+. And also there was an initial attempt by the Green Climate Fund and actually that was my previous job, where the Green Climate Fund was already providing finance for forest conservation because of the REDD+ implementation at the international level, but that stopped after I left. I hope that will pick up again in the near future. There are countries now trying to get access to finance, issuing what they call sovereign credits, but these are actually not credits. And I think that's important for the audience here, if they are already engaged in these carbon markets, to realize that there could be these kind of situations where governments with legitimate and sovereign decision want to access to carbon finance. They should make a distinction what actually contributes as a carbon offset and what doesn't. I will not get much into that. If I were to advise about negotiations, I think it's similar to what I said before. Is we need to pragmatic and accelerated action on the ground, less discussions. Well, that's the nature of these events, is to discuss, and they discuss a lot. But along with the discussions, we need to keep in mind that needs to end up in action on the ground. How that becomes a real delivery of investments, decisions that help to mitigate and climate change, and also to help adapt in those cases where we will need to face a different future because of this new climate environment.
Great. Thank you very much, Juan, for this very nice and clear overview on carbon finance, and congratulations for the work that you're doing within Permian Global and the private sector towards a net zero world. And please welcome in Florence again whenever possible. You're always welcome to join us in this in our effort. Thank you very much, and let's meet soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudio, as well. This is a great job you're doing. Thank you.